forget.
No.
In the studio is Jamie Grantham. Jamie is Communications Director, Medical Marijuana 2020 campaign. Say hello, Jamie.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for having us.
Connor
She didn't
Reeves.
even say hello, Jamie.
Hello, Jamie.
Thank you.
Jeez, cross that I bear. Connor Reeves, Connor's Medical Policy Director or Advisor of Medical Marijuana 2020 campaign. Connor, good morning to you.
Hey, good morning, Paul.
And Marilyn Tinnin, I haven't seen you in a long time, member of Campaign Steering Committee and founder and past president of Mississippi Christian Living Magazine, for which many people will say, is there a connection there?
No.
No
connection.
No connection at all.
connection.
Do you have a personal connection? Well, you apparently is someone
There's a personal connection with the Marijuana 2020. Yes, it is.
And you want to mention that?
Well, yes, that is what I'd like to mention.
Sure.
My mother suffered with dementia the last several years of her life.
Mm-hmm.
She was a brilliant, brilliant lady. And watching her go down was very hard. But about the middle point in the progression of this disease, people get very, very anxious and fearful. And in a retirement community, and I can kind of understand this, to manage her anxiety, they really sedated her a lot, which of course increased the progression of the dementia, and kind of took her away from her family in a way. So when I discovered this wonderful website that they have, the information about managing anxiety and so forth with like PTSD, and
she never had a chance to use it.
Dementia. That's correct. Yeah. But I would have done anything to have had her the best that she could be for as long as I could have her.
Let me go to Connor. As far as this initiative is concerned, we got a deadline coming up on Thursday. The state legislature will offer an alternative.
That's right, Paul. That's what they're considering right now. I just want to say we haven't been on the radio.
Have you seen it?
I have read it. Yeah, I was going to say we haven't been on here since the initiative officially qualified for the November 2020 ballot, which we're really excited about. I know Mississippians are ready to vote on this issue in November. Mm-hmm. And so the only question is whether the legislature is going to adopt an alternative amendment to be placed alongside Initiative 65 on the ballot. And they have through, I think, the end of day Thursday of this week to make that decision.
Would you say that's a win-win, or you think it's a bad idea?
I can't see how it's a win-win at all. I mean, Paul, really...
Well, a win-win would be one way or the other medical marijuana would happen in the state, because they would be, if it's voted on, they would have to implement that.
Well, I'll have to say we're very concerned about the way that HCR 39 is written. It doesn't mention any kind of regulation at all. Ours talks about regulation 19 times. Mm-hmm. HCR 39 doesn't list any qualifying medical conditions at all. You could go in for a stubbed toe or a headache or anything like that. And ours lists a very specific list of 22 incurable conditions that people suffer with, like cancer and epilepsy and Parkinson's disease. And there's also has no limit on dispensing or the amount that can be dispensed, whereas ours has a standard amount set in there that's standard across most states with medical marijuana programs, and also that was set by the government through Ole Miss. So theirs is very concerning, and it's also worded so similarly. The question that would appear on the ballot is what's worded so similarly to ours that I think it would really confuse voters.
I think one of the things, voters are definitely going to be confused, no matter how much you explain this thing, because it's going to happen all at once when they go there, and they're going to see these, and the competing ballots.
Yeah, these two very similarly worded questions.
Well, that's not the only thing, though, is it, Connor? I mean, the other thing is that you could vote no on either one.
That's right.
You could vote for one or the other, but there's also a no option on here.
It's a two-step process instead of what we would prefer, which is just a one-step process with only our question on there. Now it would become a two-step process. The first question says, do you support either 65 or 65A, or do you not support either? So you'd have to vote once whether you're for both or against both, and then you have to vote for one or the other.
Yeah. Now, the other part of that, and explain this to me, it's not a simple majority at 51%. What's the percentage here that has to, of the people who are voting?
Yeah, you have to get
not the population of the state, not the registered voters, but
it's 40%. Yeah, you have to get 40% of the people voting in the election must vote positively for 65.
Either one of these.
Correct.
So your chance of that passing,
dilutes the vote for sure.
Dilutes the vote
dramatically. It splits the vote.
On here.
It splits the vote.
What do you think? What are some of the questions that you're getting that you have any, not regrets, but do you have any worries about this thing now because you've got more questions as far as, because this goes into the Constitution? Or is there any part of this that you wish you had changed or you could modify? Because it's too late to do that now, isn't it?
It is, yeah. The language is set in stone and finalized. So one thing I want to mention, though, is whether ballot initiative 65 passed or, heaven forbid, honestly, HCR 39 passed, they're both amendments to the Constitution. So
that's what their number is, HCR 39?
HCR 39. Yeah, that's the one that we're very concerned about because of the loose way that it's been written. And one thing that I'll say about that is, there is a kind of, I'm using air quotes here, a big medical marijuana businessman from Arkansas who hired Jackson lobbyists to go around our Capitol and lobby for an alternative that would behoove him. Mm-hmm. And so when you put a limited license cap like what's in the alternative of HCR 39, we do not want that in Mississippi. That would not create a conservative. Let's be honest, in the same respect, you have people on your side who are members of the legislature who are also the same way putting money in it and for their own benefit. No. Let me back up. What I'm saying is HCR 39, the way that that's written, if that were to somehow pass and you have a limited license cap, states with that kind of setup, like Arkansas, for example, it kind of creates a cartel environment because the license holders are able to then purchase. There's only a limited number of licenses, right?
It's not in your bill?
No, ours allows anyone who were to qualify for the standards set by the Department of Health, they can qualify for a license. So it opens it up to Mississippi farmers.
You also have some discretion as far as where they can do it, 500 feet from a church and things such as that?
Yep, all that's
so
in there.
Are basically the same, but anybody could get a license?
Anyone who qualifies according to what the standards are that the Department of Health sets. So all of that would be set up through the rules and regulations in the initiative.
As far as both of these, whether it's HCR 39 or yours, I guess everybody understands. What's the implementation on this? What's the timetable to get this up and running? Is there a hard date?
In ours, there certainly is. Our goal is for patients to get their medicine, right? Mm-hmm. So in ours, it would be the rules and regs would have to be implemented and in place by July of 2021.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you see the daunting task that the Mississippi Department of Health would be incurred with?
Well, we started meeting with them. We started meeting with them in 2018. So honestly, some states who have good programs, they were given 4 months. So really, our Department of Health has 3 years. But even if you just count it from the passage, if it passes in November till that July date, they've got 9 months. And there's so many resources out there because 34 other states have medical marijuana programs.
Connor, did you guys? Does this mirror the wording from another state?
It doesn't mirror any particular state, Paul, but
it
takes a lot of the best pieces from the most conservative states that we could find and sets up a free market approach in Mississippi that we think is best for our state.
Explain this to me as far as legal is concerned. Where do we do with the money? Where does that money go from these, and I'm not going to say pot shops, but you understand what I'm talking about. The
treatment centers.
The treatment centers. That's better. That's better than pot shops.
Well, it's where they go to get their medicine.
The dispensaries. Yeah. All right, where does that money go? And again, it was only cash or check?
Well, it depends. If depends. If it's state chartered bank, some states have good luck with that. It just depends, and that's for the federal level. That's not a state thing. But the money, if the patient goes in and purchases their medicine, that goes back to the Department of Health to fund this program, which keeps taxpayers from having to bear that load.
Either way, they certainly can't use a health card.
Do you mean insurance?
I mean a flex card or something like that, or insurance for that purpose.
No insurance.
Federally, you're not able to do that. There's nothing in our amendment that prohibits that.
Do other states put that money in the bank and they put it in the bank?
Most states funnel it back to the program so it can be self-funding.
Do they put it in the bank first, or do they keep it? Or is it all cash transaction because it's against the Fed's rules?
That's where it depends. Some businesses use the bank, some are cash. It kind of depends on what those businesses work out at the bank level.
Let me touch base also on some of the questions about guns and government employees. And I want to talk about this and how it relates to your bill, too. We'll talk to guests here, Jamie Grantham, Connor Reeves, and Marilyn Tinnin. Marilyn, anything else you want to put in here?
I would just encourage everyone to go to the website because there's just a wealth of information and it's very user-friendly.
MedicalMarijuana2020.com.
That's it. Okay, let me read a little bit of this one in your bill or your initiative. Giving immunity to medical marijuana treatment centers and its officers, owners, operators, employees, contractors, agents shall not be subject to criminal or civil sanctions for processing medical marijuana in compliance with the regulations prescribed by the department. So, require any health insurance provider or any government agency or authority to reimburse any person for expenses related to the use of medical marijuana, but this is not mandated if the insurance company doesn't want to do it, right?
Correct. Per the way that it's scheduled federally, most insurance companies are not able to do that. But that's in there. I mean, if something changed federally, they certainly could. Yeah,
they could roll that in.
Absolutely.
It is unlawful for any person. This is in your initiative now to smoke medical marijuana in a public place. Any person who violates this subsection may, upon conviction, be punished by a fine of not more than $100. So that's locked in forever.
That is locked in, and that's because there's nothing in Initiative 65 that changes any current laws, whether that be employment laws, law enforcement. I mean, nothing changes any current laws, but what our initiative does is it allows patients to be able to work with their physicians to make medical decisions without affecting, the rest of the community in any way.
Connor, have you guys met with the health department?
We have. We've tried to have many conversations with them.
And they are for or against this?
Well, I think they came out publicly back in January against this after we had presented back in December. We had a lot of good discussions. They had good questions. We wanted to sit down with them and sort of go through how they were going to be able to regulate this because, as we've discussed, this really just sets the playing field, Paul. It really doesn't tell them exactly how they have to do everything. It doesn't tell them where the fences are on that playing field. So they've got tremendous ability to regulate this once they're given this authority through this constitutional amendment. And so there's a lot of good examples looking around the country to know what has worked well in other states, what can we do that's going to be good for Mississippi and Mississippi's patients. So we want to continue to have those conversations, Paul.
For the purpose of this article, the following terms shall have the following meanings. Caregiver, I'm not going to read that one, but again, but for the most part, you got to be 21 years old to partake in this, unless you're a child and you you can have a doctor's order or a child to have this also.
Well, sure, it's a medicine. So if a parent wants to go in and their child has seizures,
things such as that.
Well, that's not listed in the qualifying conditions. Okay. But if it's one of the qualifying conditions like epilepsy or cancer or Parkinson's or multiple sclerosis, they can certainly go into their doctor and with a parent's consent, they could use that as their medicine.
Who gets a treatment center? How do you do that? It's almost like a liquor store to a point. You have to be licensed?
That's right, Paul. You'd have to have a license or a permit from the Mississippi Department of Health and meet their qualifying regulations to be able to participate in that. But however, there's not going to be a cap on licenses. The businesses qualify for it. They can open up a treatment facility around the state.
Do you set the license, the amount, how much it costs to get a license?
The Department of Health would set the...
They would set the
license fee amount.
Is there a level amount of that? I mean, if they set it for $300,000 or $1 million, I mean, is there a level that you guys... set forth?
No, it has to be reasonable.
It says reasonable in there?
It says reasonable in there, and it has to be reasonable. I mean, that's where, and it's like 34 other states are doing this. More than 3 million Americans.
Can you tell me basically what it costs them for a license in other states?
It varies in each state.
Give me an idea of what we're talking about.
It could cost a couple of $1,000s. It could cost a little more than that. It could cost a little less. I do know that from some of the health officials in other states, they said originally they kind of set their prices a little high. They got started earlier than we did, so they didn't have the resources that we did, and so they have since kind of decreased those in order to help those business people.
I'm asking this because I do not know. Are most of the ones that air in states that allow, and I think there are 33 states now that allow medical marijuana.
34.
34. Are most of these franchise, or are there any independents out there who just put one up?
Oh, they're mostly independent.
Are they mostly independent?
Yeah, I would say they're mostly independent.
Are they stocked by a franchise? Because I understand there are 3 different firms that usually are the key players.
Well, in every state that has a medical marijuana program, Paul, all of their products must be grown, processed in that state. So the only way
in this state's the same way in this
that's
bill,
correct.
65.
That's correct. Everything got to be processed, grown in this state.
Therein, if you start in 2021 to do this, where are you going to get the product?
Well, farmers are people that are going to be growing this, the cultivators.
I mean, but that's going to take a while to get up and going.
That's right. There going to be a little bit of a lag time.
And then and then the regulations as far as the ag part of this is going to be put on the Mississippi Department of Health?
That's right. And we've had discussions with other state departments of health that have done this. Recently, we had in Will Humble, who was the previous director of the state program from Arizona.
He implemented their entire program.
That's right.
How long is that going to take to get up and running as far as planting and harvesting and getting a full year's supply in there?
Depends on how early they start. If they start looking at regulations now and figuring out how this is going to work, then they have a lot more time.
Yeah, but how can you do that plant now? Let's just say it's spring.
Oh, no, they couldn't plant now.
No.
Sorry, I think he's asking.
Plan.
Oh, did you say
I'm talking about the product itself.
planting it?
Yeah, planting it, harvesting it, and getting it in the system, in the marketing.
You're looking at like a 3 to 4 month process for cultivation, and then a processing period after that before products are actually ready.
So 3 to 4 months they could actually have it processed. Is there a processing plant that needs? How do you get this to market itself?
Sure, it depends on what products are being offered, whether it's let's say it's edibles or some sort of oil. That is taking the flower and it's using a CO2 extraction method to take that oil out of the flower and then turn it into products. So someone will have to invest in
certainly the edible products too. Is there a Food and Drug Administration or something that checks the edibles, make sure they're not contaminated? Who checks that?
That is very important. Yeah, so that would be determined in the rules and regs. There's independent testing labs that do that.
Department of Health got to do that too?
Well, they don't have to do it, but that would fall under their purview to license those testing centers. And so that's really important because they can test for mold, they can test for pesticides, making sure it's pure. I mean, that's what a regulated medical marijuana market is.
Those have to be in state too?
It all has to be in state because federally it's illegal to cross state lines.
Those are private sector entities that do that, or government?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So nobody nothing in your bill at 65 says you have to do this. I mean, it has to be done, but you can't force a private entity to investigate it done.
Well, that's where the free market opens up. There's going to be, in every single state it's like that. You've got people who want to apply for licenses for growing versus processing.
To me, the wheels of capitalism, and I understand it's a wonderful thing, but it takes 2 or 3 years to get this going. And when you're saying 2021 may mean a couple of different things, that it is legal, but it's not there yet.
It's going to take a little time to get off the ground. That's for sure.
Every state does because of the restrictions the federal government has.
We have a limited time here. We got to get you guys back. But let me ask you this: as far as owning a gun, because you hear this all the time, what's the skinny on there?
So our program and the language is written into the ballot measure protects anybody's their rights they already have in Mississippi. It does not amend or take away their rights to own a gun under Mississippi law. Yep. Any issues that may fall under that could be with the federal government, but we certainly can't change what the federal government's policies are on gun ownership.
Yeah, but
basically,
they wouldn't supersede. Wait a minute, they wouldn't supersede existing law if there's any. So that would prevent you. From my understanding, most of the 33 states, over half the 33 states, do have it where you cannot own a gun if you are on medical marijuana, but they just don't enforce it.
If you already own a gun, then you're okay. Now, if you become a medical marijuana patient and then you go to purchase a gun, there's a federal form. So again, this is nothing in our. We are pro Second Amendment over here.
One way or the other, you're still prevented from buying.
You're right, because they'll have to check that box.
The other part of this, if you're a government employee and it goes down to first responders, it goes to, when I just mentioned to Dennis DeBar, the chairman of education, and he's not sure about this either. If you're a school teacher, if you are in a federal program somewhere, what happens then? Are you legally allowed to have that medical marijuana card if you are attached to a federal government through a contract or through employment directly? Would you be subjected to possibly being fired?
It does not amend the rights of any employer to set their own policies for their place of employment.
Yeah, that would be up to the employer.
Yeah, but you still don't supersede a federal law.
That's right. So a federal employer would still be able to set their own policies regarding that.
So before they do this, they need to check the rules and regulations.
That's right.
They would need to check with their employer and see. That's part of this is a conservative approach. It doesn't require taxpayers to pay anything. It sets up the framework for a very well regulated program.
This and we got to get you back a little bit later on, but this has been a daunting process, hasn't it? For anybody to undertake an initiative, come on, that's a big deal.
Well, honestly, it's very meaningful. I hear so many patient stories of people who are suffering, their medications aren't working, and then I hear from other states how they're helping and changing lives.
And
so
Connor,
this is meaningful.
Look at the popularity of this is 65% so far, or something like that?
We have two different polls show between 65 and 77% of Mississippians support this.
Marilyn, final thoughts, 10 seconds or less.
Go to the website, Marijuana 2020.
MedicalMarijuana2020.com.
That was only 7 seconds. You got 3 left. We'll use them next time.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.